Hello everyone, welcome back to YK Reviews. Sorry I haven't been posting as much. I'll be completely honest, this Canadian weather is killing me here. Coughing, it's just not wanting to go away. It goes away, it comes back. So, still getting over this damn cold, this damn cough. But today we're going to be working on phase 2 of the MCU as we're counting down where phase 5 is kicking off this month. Couple of weeks time, so phase 2 coming out. So let's get into it here. So with phase 2, I'll be completely honest, I was a bit baffled with how many movies they came out with phase 2. Only 6 movies when you compare it to phase 3, phase 4 especially. So it's most likely going to be a shorter video, but with phase 2 and also phase 1 coming out also in sometime next week, I would say as well. So keep an eye on the channel there and subscribe so that you don't miss out on that video. And I've done phase 3 and phase 4 as once again counting down to the beginning of phase 5. Much more tier ranking videos also coming out too. So hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on that. So with the first movie we're going to be discussing here is going to be Iron Man 3, the first movie after the very first Avengers movie in 2012. So this is Iron Man 3 wrapping up Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man trilogy here. So with Iron Man 3, I've seen this a few times here. I'll be completely honest, when it first came out, I found the movie okay. It wasn't like my favorite MCU movie or anything like that. I thought the wrap up of Tony Stark's character arc was pretty decent, but the thing that really set it back for me here was the 10 rings, the plot reveal of Trevor playing the Mandarin, just all of that like really set the movie back for me here, even having to make up for it in the Shang-Chi movie later on in phase 4. So I wasn't a huge fan of this. With the Iron Man trilogy too, like the first one, not to give out anything away in terms of like my phase 1 movies, but Iron Man 1 was such a fantastic movie. Iron Man 2, a little bit of mixed feelings there, but when it comes to like Iron Man 3, I really liked the settings when it came to like Tony Stark in the middle of nowhere in the snow with this kid, and like that little character arc story arc going on with that. I really enjoyed that. The third act was pretty decent, pretty entertaining, but just the build up to the movie, the build up throughout the whole movie and the whole storyline. Also when it comes to like the actual villain, Aldrich Killian, I think his name was, just it fell a little bit flat. I like the dynamic between Rhodey and Tony Stark in this movie especially, and also the dynamic between Pepper Potts and the integral part that she played a role in the movie in itself. But just overall, I felt like this movie was a bit of a lackluster, especially as it's the end of the Iron Man trilogy at that moment in time. So for me, when it comes to Iron Man 3, I'm giving this one a C+. And also bear in mind too that this is just my thoughts, my opinions. Some of you may love this movie. The ones that I put lower on the list, you may find your favorite MCU movies. Let me know down in the comment section below your thoughts, your opinions. If I'm wrong, if there's ones that you agree with, let me know in the comment section below. But these are just my thoughts and my take on their phases of the MCU here. And so coming up next, we've got Thor: The Dark World, and another movie which this to me it's probably the worst. Oh, actually, wait. Love and Thunder is up there as well. I would say this is like one of the worst Thor movies. Like Thor: The Dark World got a lot of stick, and that's where they had to just completely change change the direction and the color and the brightness of the whole like movie. When you look at Ragnarok and Dark World, it's just a complete night and day type of movie. When this movie first came out, I sort of had fun time with it. I enjoyed it. I didn't see it when it came out in the theaters. I watched it a little bit later on, but I thought it was decent. I thought it was okay, but just rewatching it a few times after that, it just dips in quality the more you watch it. And the whole plot when it comes to like Jane and Thor, I thought the chemistry was a bit lackluster there. The third act, especially when it comes to this movie, was just mind-blowing to me. The villain, like Christopher Eccleston, I loved him in Doctor Who. He was so fantastic. He is a tremendous actor, but he was just hard done with the script he was given, with the direction of the villain in itself. So I just feel like this wasn't the best that they could have done, especially the sequel to Thor and then the sequel to like the Avengers 2. I enjoyed Loki and Thor, the dynamic between the two of them. I thought it was entertaining, I thought it was hilarious and fun.
Now they're following us. Now they're firing at us.
Yeah, thank you for the commentary, Loki. It's not at all distracting.
Well done. You just decapitated your grandfather.
But the two of them together just couldn't save this movie. And just overall, like, the characters too, like Darcy's sidekick or assistant or whatever, just thought he was very bland too. Just everything about the movie just didn't mesh well. So for me, when it comes to Thor the Dark World, I'm giving this one like a D. There was a few little quirks with Loki and Thor, which again I found entertaining, but just overall the movie really dipped in quality. And just, I think if you watch anybody's MCU rankings, this one is always going to be at the lower part of any ranking from what I'm seeing here. It's just not a great movie. And then next up on the list is probably the complete opposite end of the scale, Captain America Winter Soldier. And with this, I loved this movie. I still love this movie. It is one of my favorite movies of the whole like MCU. Captain America Winter Soldier was such a fantastic sequel because the story in the Captain America, the first Avenger, he's all the way back in like the 1940s and 1950s and during the Second World War. So he gets frozen in ice and now is in modern times. So then you had this sequel following him in just this brand new world where he just fought in the Avengers movie, and now he's basically working with S.H.I.E.L.D., working with Nick Fury, getting to grasp everything that's going on, finding out this plot that's going inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. with Hydra, with everything like that, finding out about the Winter Soldier, which is Bucky Barnes, which was a really nice reveal there. Everything about this movie just worked so well, from like the chase sequences to the twists, the turns, the most epic fight sequences with the elevator scene too, with Steve Rogers versus all these like Romlo and these agents as well.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Fantastic sequences. The fight choreography too was really well handled and really well done. And then you just have Bucky and Steve, like that emotion that you feel at the end of the movie, the end of the third act, and the fight sequences that they have with one another, when especially when that ship was coming down, just you see Steve's like compassion and empathy and just the willingness not to like hurt his friend. I loved what they did with this movie, and like I said, the fight choreography, the action sequences, the chase sequences too. Everything about this movie just worked so well. So for me, when it comes to the Winter Soldier, out of all of Phase 2, out of all these movies, this is probably the best one there. So for me, this goes as an A+++, the best movie of Phase 2, in my opinion here. And next up on the list here is we've got James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. Again, complete transparency, complete honesty. When I first heard about this movie, I thought, what the hell is Kevin Feige doing? What is James Gunn doing? This movie is not going to work. I don't understand why they're, out of all the characters they want to pick, they're going to pick this one. And I am so glad I was completely wrong, because this movie just, like, if you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. The way James Gunn brought about these characters, a talking tree, a raccoon, Drax, Gamora, Star-Lord, just all these characters, the way they just came about, like with the beginning of the movie, everybody's got their own like interest at heart. They're not caring about anybody else. So then just watching them slowly progress into becoming this family, you've got that emotion, like you feel sorry for these characters, you feel the emotion within the characters. You're upset that a talking tree is sacrificing himself.
We are Groot.
For the greater good. Like, it's all around goosebumps feeling type of movie. And what I mean by that is that even when you talk about it, you get goosebumps just thinking about the movie, just thinking about certain sequences. Like, I loved what they did with it. I loved the dialogues that they even have with one another, particularly when it comes to like Drax, Rocket, and Groot when Ronan came and like took the stones, and they had that little conversation where they needed to save Star-Lord, where they needed to save Gamora. Like, I just loved everything about this movie, and I'm so glad I was so wrong about this, because this movie just works so well. Even when the trailers came out, you had that little peak of interest, and then all of a sudden the movie comes out and it does so fantastically well. Like, huge props to James Gunn when it comes to this movie, and it's honestly no surprise that like he made such a great movie with Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, the whole DCU thing we'll get into in a separate video there. But like when it comes to like Guardians of the Galaxy, this was such a fantastic movie. So for me, when it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, I'm giving this one an A. And before we get into like the Avengers Age of Ultron movie, I want to go into like Ant-Man. Even though Ant-Man came after Avengers Age of Ultron, I want to talk about Ant-Man since Ant-Man 3 is coming out in a couple of weeks' time. Ant-Man 3 Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp 3 Quantumania. With this first Ant-Man movie, as I mentioned in Phase 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp just wasn't that great in terms of like the storyline, in terms of the villain, just like the direction that they went with just felt like a comedy. This one, once again, comes directly after Age of Ultron, because with Ant-Man and the Wasp, it came after Infinity War. This one comes after a big Avengers movie here. And this one, I honestly did like this movie. I felt like it was a really nice introduction to the character. I loved like the side characters too. I completely forgot the name of the one that talks fast, the other character that was also in the Suicide Squad movie with James Gunn. I really liked their characters. I loved like what they did with Scott Lang. Paul Rudd did a fantastic job with this character, and overall in terms of like storyline with Hank Pym and Scott Lang getting the Ant-Man suit, Yellow Jacket as like the villain, and especially that final sequences when it's Ant-Man versus Yellow Jacket in terms of like the house with Cassie Lang too. I really love that sequences there. So overall, when it comes to this movie, this I feel like was probably the, so far out of the two, the best Ant-Man movie out of the two of them, between Ant-Man and the Wasp and this one. Hands down, much better movie, a great introduction to the character. Also, when it comes to Ant-Man, there is some slight negatives when it comes to like certain characters and some of like the choices that they make in the storyline in itself. So for me, when it comes to like Ant-Man, that very first one, I'm giving this one a B-. This one overall was a fun movie, a great breath of fresh air after watching an Avengers movie. So I think this was a fun movie, a really great movie, and one that I do rewatch quite a bit because it is a funny movie too. And so the final one here, the sixth movie of Phase 2, this is Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, watching this the first time, I was not a huge fan of this movie at all. And then after rewatching it a couple of times, I really got to like appreciate and enjoy this movie as well. Joss Whedon, controversy, personal life aside, I'm not going into that whatsoever, but he did a really great job when it comes to the first two Avengers movie, like the official Avengers movie in Phase 1, which we'll get into in Phase 1's video. And then this one, you really appreciate it. The more you watch it, I feel like the better it is when you get to like watch it from the complete Phase 1 to Phase 4 timelines. They had so much little like Easter eggs and things that they introduced in this movie that tied into everything in the future movies and tied up quite a couple of things too. One thing that completely stands out for me is when Steve Rogers was attempting to lift Mjolnir in the in Tony Stark's apartment or house or whatever you want to call that that place, and that pays off slightly at Avengers Endgame when he finally does capture the hammer. So like things like that, and the introduction of Quicksilver, Wanda, Vision, like I really liked the way they got introduced. I really liked how like they were blended into the movie and like the character arcs that they went through. Spoiler alert, with Quicksilver dying, getting like shot after saving Hawkeye's character. I just loved what they did with Wanda and Vision's like quick one-liners too about being born yesterday. There were some really interesting and entertaining lines that there was put in throughout the movie. However, if you're going to compare it to like all of the Avengers movies, this one for me is like the fourth one out of the four. So you've got Endgame, Infinity War, the first Avengers movie, and then this one. This one would probably be at the bottom of the list. There are quite a few flaws when it comes to the movie in itself. I didn't like the direction that they went with like Hulk and Natasha Romanoff's story arc there with like that little love interest. I wish they did more with Ultron. Like, I really liked him. I like him in the comics too. I just wish that they did a lot more with him rather than have him more of like a comedy aspect in the movie, throwing like one-liners and jokes and that kind of stuff. I wish they did a lot more with him. However, you can't take away from how good of a movie this is, especially when it comes to certain sequences, like for example, Hulk versus Iron Man, that fight choreography. I loved that sequences. I love seeing Hulk just Hulk out in the town and just go batshit crazy. That's what I like to see from Hulk in itself in the movies. I think they did a really great job with that, and just that fight sequences between him and Iron Man, I thought was really well done. The third act too, when you've got the whole fight sequences, I loved what they did and how they set up everything with Baron Zemo's motives in future movies. And also, like, you go on a little side quest too when it comes to Hawkeye being introduced to his family and his backstory. I like that we got to delve deep into Hawkeye's character too. So overall, there was more ups than there were down when it comes to this movie. I love the introduction to the movie too, where like you got the Avengers breaking into this facility there, like the one-liners.
Find the scepter.
And for gosh sake, watch your language.
That's not going away anytime soon.
Steve Rogers with his little language issues there with Tony Stark. Like, just a lot of things that they did have that worked. A lot of lines and comedy aspects and the funny moments did work, but there were some certain moments, like for example, like I mentioned, the sun going down with Natasha and the Hulk. I wasn't a fan of. Ultron, I wish they did more of that. Some of the parts in the movie did like slow down a little bit, but overall I think this is a really good separate just Avengers movie. If you're not comparing it to any other Avengers movie, this is a fun Avengers movie. So overall, Age of Ultron I think is a underrated movie and one that I truly appreciate, and I think is a fun movie. So when it comes to Avengers Age of Ultron, I'm giving this one a B+. It's higher than Ant-Man when it comes to like the category here, but there are like a lot of flaws, and like I really am disappointed with Ultron, with what he went through in this movie in terms of like his character development and what they did with it. But again, overall a fun movie. So this is the list for phase 2. Again, a very short list because there were only 6 movies when it came out. If you're comparing it to like these phases now, this was such a short phase but spread out longer, which I miss this kind of thing when it comes to Marvel. So this is like the list overall. Again, Captain America Winter Soldier, hands down the best movie of this phase. So let me know your list, let me know your thoughts. If you agree, if you don't agree, please let me know down in the comment section below here. And again, I will be doing the final phase, phase 1, the introduction to the whole MCU, in the next couple of days. So definitely keep an eye out on the channel for that. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out. I've also once again done a phase 4 and phase 3 tier ranking. So I've done a playlist, so you'll be able to catch that somewhere here. And again, there will be much more tier ranking of so many other different things. So keep an eye out on the channel for that. Also, I have got a Twitter, link is in the description down below. Follow me there so that you don't miss out on whenever I do post a video. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. This is YK Reviews.